Welcome to Dolphin Dive Daily, your go-to spot for everything Miami Dolphins. If you bleed aqua and orange, hit that subscribe button and join the pod. The Miami Dolphins have reached that point in the season where frustration starts seeping through every crack of the facility walls. You can feel it in the silence of post-game press conferences, in the short answers from players who once smiled their way through interviews, and now, apparently, in the locker room itself. Because according to longtime Dolphins insider Hal Habib, things have changed behind those doors. Gone are the little things that once made the locker room a place of laughter and ease. The Pop-A-Shot basketball hoops, the card table, all the small distractions that helped players unwind between meetings and practices. The toys are gone, and in their place, there's a sense of renewed seriousness. Or at least, that's the plan. It's a familiar story in the NFL. A struggling team looks inward, deciding that the solution isn't just on the field but in the atmosphere of the building. The Dolphins, sitting at 2-7 as they prepare for a Week 10 matchup against the Buffalo Bills, have clearly decided that fun can wait. Because when a team keeps losing, even the sound of laughter can start to sound like an insult. Removing the games is a symbolic move, a statement that says, enough is enough. But let's be real, these kinds of symbolic changes can go either way. Sometimes they refocus a group. Sometimes they just amplify the pressure that's already suffocating everyone inside. If this all sounds familiar, that's because we've seen it before. Just last month, the Baltimore Ravens went through almost the exact same process. After a brutal 1-5 start, reporters noticed the Ravens' locker room had been stripped bare of its recreational comforts. No basketball hoops, no video games, no ping-pong tables. Initially, people thought head coach John Harbaugh had laid down the law, but quarterback Lamar Jackson revealed it was actually his decision. He wanted his team to lock in, to tune out the noise, and get back to work. And guess what? It worked, at least for a while. The Ravens beat the Chicago Bears, and then the Miami Dolphins, of all teams, right after those changes. Suddenly, that narrative of serious team equals better results caught fire across the league. Maybe the Dolphins saw that and thought, hey, it's worth a shot. But here's the catch. The Ravens had Lamar Jackson leading that charge. A fiery competitor, a player who can flip the switch from casual to cutthroat in an instant. The Dolphins, meanwhile, have Tua Tagovailoa, whose calm demeanor has sometimes been mistaken for complacency. That's not to say Tua doesn't care. He absolutely does. But there's a difference between saying all the right things and radiating the kind of raw, infectious intensity that pulls teammates into battle mode. And that's where the comparisons start to fade. Miami's problems run deeper than locker room decor. Fans aren't calling for change because they're tired of basketball hoops. They're calling for it because they're tired of excuses. Right now, Mike McDaniel's seat is heating up faster than the Florida sun in July. It's wild, because not long ago he was the golden boy, the young, quirky genius who was supposed to unlock Tua's potential and bring modern innovation to Miami's offense. And for a while, it worked. But the NFL moves fast. When you start losing, your wit turns from charming to annoying, your analytics start to sound like excuses, and your leadership, or lack thereof, becomes the biggest storyline of your season. If the Dolphins stumble again, there's a growing belief that McDaniel might not make it to the end of the year. And when you talk about what kind of leader Miami might need next, one name keeps surfacing like a ghost from the past: Dan Campbell. Now, if you've been following the NFL for a while, that name probably triggers a mix of emotions. Dan Campbell, the man who once stepped in as Miami's interim head coach back in 2015, when Joe Philbin's Dolphins were as lifeless as a dead battery. Campbell took over a team that had flatlined and somehow pumped a jolt of electricity through the entire building. He was raw, loud, unapologetically intense. The kind of guy who looked like he could still strap on pads and hit someone. He didn't just coach football, he lived it. And for a brief stretch, those Dolphins looked alive again. They played with emotion, with bite, even if the results didn't always follow. Detroit Lions defensive coordinator Kelvin Shepard, who was a linebacker on that 2015 Dolphins squad, recently talked about what it was like when Campbell took over. And you could hear it in his voice. That memory still burns bright. I know what those guys in that locker room are feeling, because I felt it, Shepard said. Listen, I love Joe Philbin, but in the Miami Dolphins facility, all the lights were off. We didn't pay the electric bill all year, And then when Dan took over, he paid the whole 6 months. That's one of those lines that hits hard because it's not really about electricity. It's about energy, about leadership that wakes a team up from its sleepwalk. When Campbell arrived, players believed again. They practiced with purpose. They looked like they actually enjoyed competing. Shepard even shared this unforgettable story about Campbell's first day as head coach. He called Shepard and Mike Pouncey into the middle of the field, drew a circle around them, and told them to go at it, one-on-one, right there in front of the team. Totally old school, totally insane by today's standards, and totally Dan Campbell. It was a statement, the kind of primal, chest-thumping moment that says, "This is who we are now." And guess what? The team responded. That Dolphins squad, previously adrift, suddenly played like they had something to prove. They didn't win every game, but they fought in every one. For the first time in a while, the lights really were on in Miami. So here we are, a decade later, and the Dolphins once again find themselves searching for that same spark. It's almost poetic, really. Mike McDaniel, the cerebral strategist, has taken the Dolphins about as far as his style will allow. His offense can hum when things are clicking, but when the grind gets tough, when players need more than just a clever game plan, that's when leadership becomes the difference maker. And that's what Campbell brought. He might not have been ready in 2016 when he interviewed for the full-time head coaching job, but time has proven that he was the real deal. Since then, he's turned the Detroit Lions from a laughingstock into a powerhouse. After a rough 0-10-1 start, he's guided them to an NFC Championship appearance, the top seed in 2024, and another winning record this year. That's not luck. That's leadership that grows roots. Miami, on the other hand, has been chasing an identity for years. Every time they think they've found it, whether it was under Adam Gase, Brian Flores, or now McDaniel, it slips through their fingers. The removal of basketball hoops might seem like a small move, but it speaks to something bigger, a franchise that still doesn't know what kind of culture it wants to have. Do they want to be the loose, player-friendly team that McDaniel envisioned? Or do they want to be the tough, gritty, old-school kind of team that Campbell represents? You can't be both. The best teams in the league know who they are. The Dolphins, even after all these years, still don't. Fans are noticing too. Social media is flooded with frustration, memes, and nostalgia. They remember that 2015 team, even with its flaws, played with heart. They remember Dan Campbell pacing the sideline, veins popping, eyes blazing, a man who made them believe again, if only for a moment. That kind of energy is contagious, and right now, the Dolphins could use every drop of it. Because no amount of strategic tinkering or locker room cleaning is going to fix what's really broken. This team doesn't need fewer distractions. It needs more direction. As the season spirals, the conversation around Miami is shifting from how can they turn it around to who's going to fix it next. McDaniel may survive the year, but the writing feels faintly etched on the wall. When leadership becomes the question, nostalgia often becomes the answer. And that's why Campbell's name keeps echoing through Dolphins circles, not just because of what he did, but because of what he represented: accountability, intensity, belief. He wasn't perfect, but he lit a fire. He turned the lights back on. So maybe this locker room makeover is Miami's quiet plea for a reset, a symbolic gesture that says they're ready to get serious again. But symbols only matter if the results follow. Taking away a Papa shot doesn't make you tougher. Folding up a card table doesn't build chemistry. Winning does. Belief does. Leadership does. Until the Dolphins rediscover that, their locker room will be spotless, and their season will still be messy. Still with us? Then show some love. Hit that like button and let us know in the comments. What's your take on the Fins this week? The NFL world woke up today to a seismic shock that has left fans, analysts, and players themselves scrambling to process the news. The Miami Dolphins, in what has been described as one of the most painful decisions in recent memory, have officially confirmed that Tua Tagovailoa will be leaving the team. Rumors had been swirling for weeks, whispers bouncing around locker rooms and social media, but the official announcement has sent shockwaves through the league. For a quarterback who once carried the hopes of an entire franchise on his shoulders, this marks the end of a chapter that was as exhilarating as it was tumultuous. The Dolphins' locker room, sources say, has been a mix of disbelief, sorrow, and cautious optimism about the future, as teammates come to terms with the departure of a player who became synonymous with the team's identity over the past few seasons. Tua's journey in Miami has been nothing short of a roller coaster. Drafted with high expectations, the young quarterback's career was immediately under the microscope, with analysts projecting him as the future of the Dolphins' offense. His early days in the league were marked by flashes of brilliance, moments where it seemed as though he could carry the team to heights not seen since the days of Dan Marino. But injuries, controversies, and the relentless pressure of performing in a city where football is almost a religion have defined much of his tenure. And now, with this confirmation, the narrative shifts dramatically. The Dolphins, a team that has built much of its recent strategy around Tua's talents, will be forced to reimagine their future while the quarterback himself steps into a new chapter, one that could reshape the balance of power in the NFL. Inside sources hint that the decision was far from easy for the Dolphins management. There were late-night meetings, strategy sessions, and heated debates behind closed doors. Some within the organization reportedly argued for patience, insisting that Tua's development curve could still yield championship-caliber performances. Others, however, saw the move as an unavoidable reality, recognizing the growing tension between expectations and execution, the need for a new direction, and the pressures of a fanbase hungry for success. What makes this departure particularly compelling is the timing. Tua leaves at a point where his career is still in its early stages, a quarterback with talent yet to be fully realized. The implications are massive, not just for Miami, but for the NFL as a whole. Suddenly, the rumor mill is ablaze with speculation. Where will Tua land? Which teams have already begun quietly plotting to secure a quarterback who could redefine their offense? Fans, predictably, have erupted across social media. From heartfelt tributes to sharp criticisms of the organization, the reaction is global. Memes, hashtags, and viral threads have proliferated, capturing the mood of a community torn between mourning a hero and questioning the franchise's decision-making. Local Miami bars and sports cafes, sources say, have been filled with patrons dissecting every angle, replaying Tua's greatest moments, and debating whether this move signals a new era of rebuilding or a colossal misstep. The emotional toll is palpable. Tua was more than a player. He was a symbol of hope for a city that has longed for a Super Bowl contender. Now, with his departure confirmed, that hope feels suspended, caught somewhere between nostalgia for what was and uncertainty for what lies ahead. Industry insiders are already buzzing about potential destinations. Teams with quarterback needs are reportedly circling, with some executives viewing Tua as a transformative acquisition capable of elevating a franchise overnight. But it's not just about athletic ability. Sources suggest that Tua's leadership, work ethic, and character make him an attractive option for locker rooms in need of stability and guidance. Yet, every team considering a move will weigh the risks, the injuries, the high-pressure history, and the expectations that have haunted him. Analysts are predicting a bidding war, while others caution that the optics of such a high-profile departure could complicate negotiations. Meanwhile, Miami faces the daunting task of recalibrating its roster and offensive strategy, likely engaging in feverish trade discussions and draft calculations that will occupy every corner of their front office for the foreseeable future. There's also a broader cultural narrative emerging. Tua's departure raises questions about the modern NFL quarterback experience, the immense scrutiny, the physical toll, and the fine line between heroism and vulnerability. Miami, a team that has become emblematic of high-stakes football in the social media era, now must navigate a delicate balance between progress and fan sentiment. The optics are tricky. While some will applaud the franchise for decisive action, others will see it as a betrayal of loyalty, a cautionary tale about the harsh realities of professional sports. For Tua, the spotlight will intensify. Every throw in his next home stadium will be analyzed in the context of this transition, every interview dissected, every touchdown weighed against the narrative of his Miami tenure. It's a high-stakes drama that transcends the field, intertwining sports, business, and culture in ways that few athletes ever experience. In Miami, the conversation extends beyond the locker room. Coaches, commentators, and former players are weighing in, each adding layers to the unfolding story. Some see the move as an opportunity for the Dolphins to reinvent themselves, embracing new offensive schemes and potentially even drafting a successor to chart a bold, long-term course. Others caution that the loss of Tua could destabilize team chemistry, leaving a void in leadership and morale that may take years to rebuild. Fans are divided, with some rallying behind the decision as a necessary step toward competitiveness, while others mourn what they see as the premature end of a promising era. The emotional resonance is undeniable. This isn't just a roster change. It's a narrative rupture, a moment that redefines expectations, allegiances, and the trajectory of both a player and a franchise. Speculation, of course, is reaching a fever pitch. Rumors abound about Tua's next destination, with whispers of reunions with former coaches, potential trades to teams in desperate need of a spark, and even surprise moves that could shift the power balance across the league. Analysts are debating not just the football implications, but the psychological ones. How will Tua respond to a fresh environment? Will he thrive under new systems, or will the pressure of expectations follow him to a new city? Meanwhile, Miami is already positioning itself for the fallout, scouting options, assessing draft strategies, and preparing messaging to manage fan reaction. Every move is scrutinized, every statement analyzed, and every rumor amplified, because in the NFL, perception can be as impactful as performance. As the sun sets on this chapter in Miami, one thing is clear. Tua Tagovailoa's departure is more than a transaction. It's a story of ambition, pressure, triumph, and heartbreak, unfolding in real time across the league and in living rooms from coast to coast. The Dolphins have confirmed the news, but the ramifications will ripple far beyond the confines of Hard Rock Stadium. Fans, commentators, and players alike are left to ponder the what-ifs, the moments of brilliance, and the missteps that led to this point. For Tua, the journey continues elsewhere, and the NFL braces for the next act in a drama that has captivated millions. One thing is certain, the reverberations of this announcement will be felt for seasons to come, as the ripple effects of a quarterback's farewell reshape rivalries, strategies, and the emotional landscape of professional football itself. That's a wrap for today's dive. If you're loving the content, share it with a fellow Dolphins fan, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a splash. Fins up.